Good morning. This is the second in a series about bounty hunting. This is Friday morning, April the 11th, 2008. Still in the Austin area. Still a beautiful day. It's a great day to be talking about bounty hunting. So many people have questions. There's so many questions about it, and there's a lot of misconceptions and fallacies about it as well. I'm normally a very reserved person. This is going to be a series of discussions, and more can actually be followed as we progress about the ins and outs, the actual stories. I try to get excited about it, but I've lived this for so long, it's kind of hard to kick into that gear, because normally, since I'm easygoing and quiet. Well, I'm not really quiet. I'm gregarious. I mean, I do like to talk to people, but I just, I don't really get all excited and animated, and until I'm about to, when I'm on an investigation, I'm on a hunt. Everything is heading up a certain way, and I see that I'm about to get to that person I need to make the arrest on. Then when we get to the arrest portion of that investigation, it kicks up another notch. Now, I don't know if that's adrenaline that's pumping or that's just anticipation, because I have no problems with arrests, and I'm not scared of anything or anybody. I never have been, and I don't care if it's the worst of the worst and they carry a weapon, and we heard all these horror stories of the things that they've done. I've never turned a case down. I've never worried about anything. Oh, I guess that's wrong. I guess I just lied to you. I did turn down one case one time. Had an individual in the Tennessee area that was a very well-known criminal, and I was approached by the feds that they needed this guy brought out of Mexico, and they did not have jurisdiction then and could not get him out. And he owned basically I guess a fortress with a lot of hired guns to protect him. And when he came home to the Middle Tennessee area, the sheriff even left the county because he didn't want to have a confrontation. And when the guy hit town, everybody knew it. He was well liked. He bailed a lot of people out of financial crisis that had farms and other businesses. The guy had a lot of money, and so everybody liked him, and the common Joe did. So nobody was going to turn him in, but when he came to town, everybody knew he was there, including the sheriff, and he'd always make a trip somewhere so that he was out of town and couldn't actually go and confront him and make the arrest, because there were felony warrants for him out of Memphis, Tennessee. So I was approached, and they asked me to go and pick him up, and it was going to be a substantial reward for the arrest. And after I did some deep research on this individual, I found out that he had people killed just with a phone call. And since I couldn't be granted anonymity from the feds, I refused the case because either myself or my family could be hurt. It isn't worth it. And I was going to share a fee of $300,000 at the time. There were three of us. I didn't place a value on my life of $100,000 or even $1 million, because I prefer to live, and my family would have had the money, but I wouldn't have been here. And so that was too great a sacrifice. My life's not worth any money to be paid, any amount. I can't trade my life and say, okay, I'll do it for this and maybe lose it. Anyway, that's the only case I've ever turned down, and I felt justified in doing that. Trying to decide what stories are most interesting, and it's just, everyone is so unusual and unique. Because people are unique, they're unusual. There's not any two people on the face of the earth that are exact. So you're never in the same circumstance. You place two people there, you're not going to have the same outcome, the same series of events that occur, because people do things differently. So I guess one of the most satisfying cases I ever had was a girl out of Tennessee that was missing, and I've got her story pretty much covered in depth in my book, which is Secrets of a Modern Day Bounty Hunter, and I disclose a lot of stories in there. There's color photos and over 100 photos, over 100 stories, and I feature excerpts and full chapters that you could read. If you're interested, you can go to bountyhuntersecrets.com or secretsofabountyhunter.com, and it will take you there, and that's a free thing. You can actually read. I'm going to have all 18 chapters up there. Some pictures, I can't include them all, it's too extensive. And this story is in there, and I call her and the ugliest girl in the world. I mean, no insult intended to the female gender, but this girl was so ugly, and she's worse than homely, and that's how I had to refer to her, because every case gets a moniker, whether it's the balcony boy or the basement guy, or everybody's story has something I can remember it by, and hers was the ugly girl. And I recently talked to the deputy that had worked with me on that case. He's now still a deputy in Tennessee, and at that time he was going through the academy to become a deputy, and I was training him in bail enforcement. And I called him and asked him if he still had that file, because I wanted to feature her picture in my book. But he couldn't find the file to save his life, and there was no way to substitute her picture with another one, because who would know if it was really her or not other than him and I. And we couldn't find anybody, any females that were ugly enough to say this was her. She was a one-of-a-kind, homely, ugly individual. But as it turned out, she fled from the Nashville area, caught a ride with a truck driver, got into Silver Springs, Texas, or Sulphur Springs, Texas, and the series of events led up to where she actually hung herself in a closet with an ironing cord. Nobody knew where she was from. I located her, and the coroner's office had a picture sent to the coroner, because he said, "Are we talking about the same woman here?" And I said, "Well, she is pretty homely. She hurts your eyes to look at her." And he goes, "Well, that's right so far." So I sent him a picture, and he said, "That's her." He said, "That nobody's as ugly as that." And I said, "Okay, I need a picture of her. I've got one of her alive. I need one of her deceased with a death certificate, so I still have the bondsman to get off the liability of the bond." But the tracking of her was very interesting, because she had gone from town to town and continued to catch rides until she wound up in that town, and how she wound up in a closet committing, the formal verdict was committing suicide. I find that hard to believe, because there was an anonymous tip that the police could find a body in the closet. And when her husband showed up from Nashville, and I know it's surprising, as ugly as she was, she did have a husband. He didn't want to claim the body. He didn't even want to look at her. All he wanted was her purse and its contents. And they would not give him that until he formally identified the body as this woman. Once he did that, he left. He got the purse and left, and the county got stuck with the burial arrangements where she was cremated. And it was very interesting to try to follow her, because we kept being right behind her. Every case is that way. You'll be a week behind, a month behind, 6 weeks behind. All of a sudden that starts narrowing down. You're just a day behind. You're an hour behind. You're minutes behind. And then finally you're there. There's your individual, and you're going to get within that 2-foot area so you can get your hands on that person and put the handcuffs on them and make the formal arrest. It's called effecting the arrest. You're actually serving the arrest, and the power of that arrest to place handcuffs on an individual is given you through federal law and state law, depending on the state you live in, because anyone who is not licensed or authorized to make the arrest can be charged, depending on the state, with kidnapping. And in Texas, you can be charged with that if you're not licensed under the DPS. And that's covered in the book as well. But that was a very interesting story because of the outcome. It was sad, but it was pretty interesting during the hunt, during the chase. And then I've got a lot of other ones that I guess the most exciting guy video that I had might best be discussed in the next series, because it's kind of detailed, and the outcome is just as interesting, and we'll have to cover that then. I'll see you then.